Hi and welcome to Face to Face. I'm Greg Campling. Today we're talking to Rowland Thomson and Crusader Hillis from Hares and Hyenas. Welcome, guys.
Howdy. Thanks, Greg.
So tell us, how did Hares and Hyenas start off?
Well, we opened the shop in late 1991. In fact, we signed on the 1st of December, and had opened by Christmas that year. We'd been looking for about 6 months for a place, because at that time the only gay books available were through general bookstores, and we thought it was about time Melbourne had its own focus on gay literature.
Both of us had worked in bookshops before, and Rowland had sort of been saying probably for about 3 to 4 years before that Melbourne really needed the shop, and we were just really surprised that nobody got around to doing it before we did it, really, because then we went out looking for a shop and we found Commercial Road.
So how did you go about setting up the shop? How does one set up a shop?
Well, through the experience in other bookshops, we knew the suppliers, so it was a matter of just focusing on gay titles. So at that stage, 10 years ago, there wasn't very much local produced books, so we had to import sort of 80% of them ourselves, and over the years that's come down to a bit over half are now local, and then half are imported. So
and we, as Rowland said, we signed the lease I think on the 1st or 2nd of December,
yep.
And we were opened on the 23rd of December. So it took us 3 weeks to get the shop, get it completely renovated, and get the books in. And I think we opened with probably about 10 shelves of books.
Yep, 10 shelves of books. It took about the next 6 months to build up the stock to a reasonable level. But because up until then the main collections were just a couple of shelves, it was more than there had been before.
Mm. And queer books have really changed a lot over the years as well, haven't they?
That's right. Yeah, they have. There was about 5 years ago. They became a lot more focused on queer literature, and for quite a while there was a push in both locally and in the mainstream. So people like Penguin had published around Mardi Gras. They realised that Mardi Gras was a good time to publish. So there were 3 or 4 books each year published at that time that could be promoted. But they were quite disappointed because I think they hadn't done their sums and didn't realise sort of the size of the market. So that they've pulled right back on the number of titles now.
So how has gay literature changed over the years since you've started selling books?
Initially, most of our titles were small independent published books, and as I said, that about 6-7 years ago that became more mainstream, and now it's gone back to a lot more independent titles. Most of it's American, but they've also changed in that they've gone a lot more multicultural in the American titles, and so it's not as strongly just sort of white bread titles of gay and lesbian literature. So it's much more broader now than it was 10 years ago. There's books on sort of the Muslim experience, books. There's quite a strong Indigenous writing. There's quite a few Australian Indigenous writers, as well as Native American writers as well. So it's a lot broader, but at the same time, it's a lot harder to be published.
At the same time, there's a lot more stuff on gender around now than there used to be. Transgender titles really started taking off just under 10 years ago, and that's had a big effect in terms of academic publishing and all sorts of book titles?
An area in publishing, for an area to begin getting a lot more titles, it has to have the background work in it. So for say in transgender issues, it starts off in journals, and so there's a lot more writing in journals, and then as that develops, the books are start to get published, and they have to find their way. So it's a process that has to evolve. So initially you have to have one or two books that sort of strike out and deal with the topic in a broad sense, and then as the market matures, then you get more specific titles in more niche areas. So now we've got coming out stories and transgender coming out stories and more technical aspects of in the transgender area. So it all area in publishing, it's like a body of knowledge. You start off with the small articles, and that develops, and so you see in areas like say same-sex marriage and stuff that it'll slowly develop, and then it'll blossom out, and it'll be quite a varied lot of books. So.
Is there a particular genre that's more popular than others?
Well, fiction always sells extremely well.
Most people read fiction, don't they?
Yeah.
So, I mean, most people who buy books read fiction as well as non-fiction.
Yes, so, and especially up until recently with the boom in queer cinema, fiction books were the main way that people found to find out about sexuality and about how to express their own lives. So
a lot of fiction was autobiographical too, I think early on especially, and some of that has really shifted over the last few years.
Yes, but it's still an area, if you're say growing up in the country, it's an area, books are a resource that you can find to find out about other experiences in sexuality. Something like Holding the Man, which is a Penguin title and would be carried by a lot of mainstream books. When you grow up, it's like an uncanny sense of being able to find those books that help you find a way to express your own lives. So you can go into a bookshop and find those titles.
Right.
So, yeah.
We'll be back after these messages. You're watching Face to Face with Rowland Thomson and Crusader Hillis from Hares and Hyenas. Welcome back to Face. I'm Greg Campling, and we're talking to Rowland Thomson and Crusader Hillis from Hares and Hyenas bookshop. Welcome back, guys.
Thank you.
Now, Hares and Hyenas has actually done a few literary events over the years. Tell us a bit about that.
When we first opened the shop back at the end of '91, one of the first things Rowland said in an interview with, I think, was it brother, sister at that stage?
I think so.
Yeah,
yes.
Was that he thought that the shop, if it's going to be a good queer shop, it's got to be a community centre as well as just a bookshop where you're selling things. So very early on we became very much about information for everybody as they came in. We very much sort of made sure that our staff were very much into customer service. And then one of the things we discovered that was that we also wanted to start developing writing in Melbourne. And so we started to put on events. We started off having events in the shop, cabarets.
That's right, yep, from '93 we had cabaret events, beginning with Fringe and Midsummer, and that built up until about '98 or so, and we separated them and had events at venues around town.
Yeah, we started doing things at the market and different cafes and Trades Hall, Builders Arms. Hares and Hyenas won the Melbourne Fringe Festival Writing Award 2 years in a row. And then by the time we sort of got around to the end of the 90s and the early 2000s or the early noughties, we were getting up to sort of, I think we did about 24 events in 2002 at the Trades Hall.
That's right.
Over a 2-week season.
Yes.
So I think over the 14 years we've probably done about 150 different readings and performances and cabaret shows in Melbourne and in Sydney.
Is there any particular event that comes to mind that was a big...
There was a gender cabaret that we did in our Smith Street store that was great, with a jazz group and readings. That was
Julie Peters doing her show I Dream There For I Am. Moira Finnecane doing a cabaret season in the shop after 9:30 at nights in Brunswick Street. And I think also just that we did a lot of programming around Indigenous people from across Australia, and started doing that every year. And we also did a lot of work around disability as well. And both of those things we feel were sort of like the things that really made Word Is Out, which was what the events from Hares and Hyenas were called, made it stand out from the crowd.
We tried to give voice to different groups that would find it difficult to be published, and in that way their stories could be told without having it to be put down in a book, which is a completely other step, in that you need a lot more money to publish a book than to have someone read. So we looked at sort of multicultural coming out in various cultural settings as well. So
I think it's also really important to say is we never saw ourselves as a gay and lesbian bookstore. In fact, we were sort of always saw our bookshop as being for the straightest gay and the queerest straight, and that it's about, and so everything we've done all along the way in terms of programming, events, and in who we invite into our shop and who we want to be there has sort of really, it's not just about the gay and lesbian community. We've very much been about opening that up.
And encompassing everybody and including everyone.
Yeah, and actually be encompassing and including people that don't necessarily find it easy to have a voice. Because I think one of the things that we recognised about the queer community is that mostly it does encourage people to sort of talk about themselves, and we are more interested in people who are like ourselves, where we were much more interested in hearing from people who aren't like us.
Everybody likes to hear different stories, and we don't often hear, as you were saying, you don't hear as much about intersex and people with disabilities who may be gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender.
Yeah, one of the years over Midsummer, we focused on disability, and had a few writers from around Australia, people like Kath Duncan, who's done work with the ABC on programs about disability. Came for readings and so, and it is an area that quite often it's steamrolled over, in that that people are looking for. I mean, so much is based on a financial gain that small areas like disability are completely forgotten, and so we try to show those experiences, because all of us can learn a lot from other people's experiences.
Do either of you have a background in writing and publishing, or you just decided?
Crusader's done quite a bit of writing.
And I've been a freelance editor, and I've done publishing and things like that over many, many years. But I think, and a lot of that sprung out of an interest, though, rather than sort of so much of a professional calling. I think the really interesting thing about both Rowland and I is that we come from really diverse career backgrounds, and we haven't really followed very traditional paths in where we've come from and where we take ourselves. And
that's probably actually a good thing, because it's allowed you to see where there are areas of the community that aren't covered in publishing and make a difference.
Absolutely.
Now, Hares and Hyenas don't only do books, but they have those wonderful glamorous calendars. I'm sure they're very popular.
Well, this time of year, yes. We've got calendars right along the floor and up to the roof at the moment.
Best-selling calendar, Rowland?
Well, this year the Paul Freeman one, which is based around Bondi Classic, which is one of the few Australian photography books around. Paul Freeman a lot of people would know from his work in Blue and his photographs of Ian Roberts. It's very popular, and also the Men of Australia, which is a Queensland calendar done by David Austin of Speedo-clad boys is also a popular one.
Terrible.
So we've always had problems with women's calendars, that there's not a lot produced. But
so we need more women's calendars.
Yes, start producing them now for next year. Don't leave it too late.
Right.
But at the moment, there's about three very strong women's calendars as well.
Okay. You're watching Face to Face. We'll be back after these messages. Welcome back to Face to Face. I'm Greg Campling. We're talking to Rowland Thomson and Crusader Hillis from Hares and Hyenas in South Yarra. Welcome back, guys.
Thank you, Greg.
Now, Crusader, you have become the director of the Gasworks Arts Park in Albert Park. Tell us about that.
Okay. Ever since we opened the shop, in fact, within a couple of years, I was always doing other freelance work. Because I think, as Rowland said, you know, between the break, we were talking about the fact that it's actually quite difficult to make a lot of money out of book selling because it's a small business. And so one of the things that we've done to sort of made sure that we can keep the business going is by me working outside the business as well. And that's included working with the Melbourne International Arts Festival over the last few years. And then I think from the experience of working at Hares and Hyenas and doing all the events, recently I got appointed to Gasworks, and my job there will be to run the centre and to do some programming and put some events on that are happening there, and I'm hoping that's going to include quite a bit of queer programming.
So is there anything in particular that you want to showcase in that new role?
I think it's a good idea for me to start first and figure out what to do after I start, rather than sort of say now what my vision is about that.
Everyone will be popping along now, so you'll have to get going.
Exactly. There's a lot going on there already. It's actually a centre that's going very, very well as it is.
Now, we were talking earlier about how the internet has changed your business over the years, and you mentioned that people will even order stuff over the internet that may live in Melbourne, just across the river, as you were putting it, and they still order it by mail order on the internet.
So, well, as I think most people know, people don't cross the river in Melbourne very much, so you're either north side or a south side, and I suppose east and west have to commit to one or the other. So for those people that complain that we closed down in Smith Street, it is quite easy to order over the internet. Most of our stock is online with reviews, and anything over $30 is freight free. And if you order in the morning, for most of Melbourne, you'll get them the next day if they're in stock. So we do recommend that if you just can't be bothered to cross the river.
So besides ordering through your website, are there also areas of the website for literary works and so on?
We have for a few years we produced a literary magazine review and original work magazine, and we're slowly putting that online as well. So we did about how many issues? About 15 or 16 issues.
We did 14 published ones and then about 4 or 5 online ones.
Yes, so they're slowly being put online, and that's got short stories, interviews, and it covers everyone from Christos Chalkis, when Loaded was first published 10 years ago, an interview with him then, to reviews of his most recent book, Dead Europe. So it sort of covers a lot of work, and you can see a lot of progress at that time.
So we're incredibly proud of the website because it does encapsulate the whole 14 years we've been in business, and it really is a great resource to find out about books and also to order them.
And as you were saying, discussing areas like intersex and disability, that and even Indigenous people, that there are minority groups and areas and through the internet and of course through the books that you stock, you're opening up the doors to those people who may be way out in the country areas or indeed anywhere in the world through the internet. Do you do much shipping overseas?
Yes, we ship a lot of we ship a lot of photography books to Japan for some reason. I have never
No
been
calendars
able to,
though.
no calendars, but for some reason we've got quite a large Japanese group and that buy a lot of photography books from us. There's quite a few Australian titles that aren't available, especially in America, due to the way that the rights to books are sold. They can't get quite a few Australian titles, and so we have sent a lot over there. When Head On first was released in the US, the film, we sold a lot of Christos's book to America because they couldn't get the title there. So with the exchange rate and also overseas people don't have to pay GST, the prices are quite competitive.
It's quite reasonable.
Yes.
So anyone watching this from overseas, please
That's
give us a
right.
call.
Now, is there any particular books that you haven't been able to stock because of copyright or?
Well, Australia's in a fantastic position with books in that we get the English books through due to the way the publishing is organised worldwide, but we also have quite a strong import industry of the American titles. So whereas America will just stock American titles and the British will just stock the British titles, we stock everything. And so I think in Australia, especially independent bookshops are some of the best in the world due to that reason.
Right, and you would have seen the website come up on your screen, which is www.haresandhyenas.
We're old-fashioned.
Hyphen.
We don't go for underscore. I think it's a very ugly character, so it's a hyphen.
So hares-hyenas.com.au. Now, thank you, Rowland Thomson and Crusader Hillis, for coming in and talking to us on Face to Face. And if anyone wants to pop along to their bookstore in Commercial Road, South Yarra, I'm sure they'll look after you.
7 days a week.
I'm Greg Campling. Thank you.
Thanks.